And it's based on this model called 2-hour learning, where we use now an AI tutor and adaptive apps to deliver personalized one-to-one education for every single student. And as a result, our kids learn twice as fast as kids in a traditional classroom. They're able to do it in only 2 hours a day. And then what we do is we focus the rest of the day on the things that I think parents really care about developing, which is life skills. So things like public speaking and entrepreneurship, teamwork, leadership, grit.
Welcome to the Honor It podcast. I'm Honor Garrett, your host, and we're here to honor all that is good in the world. I interview top professionals around the globe who are making a difference, impacting lives, and creating positive change. We cover topics that matter to you: mindset, education, anti-aging, menopause, marriage, health, wealth. We bring you answers and insights. My passion is to inspire women to thrive and build a life and legacy they love, no matter what their age. Life in the game, not on the sidelines. It's game time, so let's go. I can't tell you how excited I am for today's guest. MacKenzie Price is shaking up the world of education with her innovative approach to learning. As the co-founder of 2-Hour Learning and Alpha School, she's proving that kids don't need to be stuck in a classroom all day to thrive. In fact, it could be hurting them. Her mission: help students crush their academics in just 2 hours, leaving the rest of the day for exploring passions and building life skills. Using the power of AI, she's making learning faster, more fun, and, let's be honest, way more effective. MacKenzie is passionate about reimagining traditional education and on a mission to make education inspiring, engaging, and freeing for kids everywhere. Welcome, MacKenzie. How are you today?
Honor, I'm so excited to be here and just listening to the introduction you gave of me. First of all, thank you. But I think this podcast, I need to listen to it because I need help with health and future menopause issues and finding all the things that you're doing for women. So I think I'm your target audience.
Oh, well, I love that. I think that whether people have kids that are in school right now, or even if they're empty nesters and they need to be that person that helps their kids when they have kids figure out what to do for their education, that this is so important. So you are looking at education like nobody has ever looked at it before. What inspired you to start 2-Hour Learning and the Alpha School? And how did your daughter's experiences shape that vision?
Yeah. It's a very interesting thing for me to look back over the thread in my life from the last, 10 plus years and really how much my children were the a catalyst for all of the things that I'm doing now from a career perspective, certainly. And it's been really a fun, grateful experience to kind of look back on that. But I will tell you very quickly, when it was time for my two daughters to head to school, my husband and I were both products of public school education. And we said, we're going to send our kids down the street to our local public school. We live in Austin, Texas. We have great public schools. And I sent my oldest daughter there for kindergarten. And shockingly fast, I started getting frustrated with the lack of personalization. It was really hard for the teacher in the classroom to give the attention to every single student, that needed to do that. And I was noticing that with my daughter. And I spent about 2.5 years working within that system as a parent, just trying to figure out, are there ways that we can improve this experience for my kids? About halfway through my oldest daughter's second grade year, we were chatting one day and she looked at me and she said, I don't want to go to school tomorrow. And I said, what do you mean you love school? And she looked at me and she said, school is so boring. And I just had this moment where I was like, they have taken a kid who is tailor made to want to be like a good schoolgirl, and they've wiped away that love of learning. And I thought about this. I'm like, she's got so many more years in the system and we got to do something different. And I went and met with our principal and she said, MacKenzie, I understand what you're trying to do, but this is like trying to change the direction of the Titanic. It's just not possible. And I knew at that point that was my cue to leave. But for me, it wasn't about going to another school, another private school or something like that. It was about the model. The model of the teacher in front of the classroom is broken. It's an outdated model that is not delivering the academic or life skills results that we need to have in young people today. And so I looked around and decided I needed to start something for my own children. And so 10 years ago, I started my first school. And we knew at that time that we could use personalized adaptive learning apps in order to teach kids, and that we could do it in way less time than traditional school does with the teacher in front of the classroom model. And so we started that. We also started with this emphasis on public speaking and entrepreneurship skills. And over the years, that's now developed into a number of different schools that are spread throughout Texas as well as now Florida, and we're expanding across the country. And it's based on this model called 2 Hour Learning, where we use now an AI tutor and adaptive apps to deliver personalized one-to-one education for every single student. And as a result, our kids learn twice as fast as kids in a traditional classroom. They're able to do it in only 2 hours a day. And then what we do is we focus the rest of the day on the things that I think parents really care about developing, which is life skills. So things like public speaking and entrepreneurship, teamwork, leadership, grit. So many of the things actually that you probably have a lot of experience with from sports, right? It's all of those life skills that can be developed often on the field in a sports team, dealing with failure, taking feedback, all of those kinds of skills. And we're able to have our kids spend the majority of the day doing these really fun and engaging workshops where they're learning those skills, and they can do it in a variety of different kinds of themes. So we have a sports academy, we have a gifted and talented school where kids are focusing on kind of academically rigorous workshops. We have an esports academy called Next Gen Academy, where kids are using gaming and esports to crush their life skills development and academics. And then we have Alpha School, which is our kind of flagship school that started all of it.
This is so exciting because I think about how much time we wasted in school. It was more of a social thing,
So much.
and I have seen people who try to do a little bit of a different model where they would do teaching and you would learn at home, and then you would come in and do your homework with the teacher actually
Right.
helping you with your questions. But that simply didn't work either or wasn't very effective. So, do you have an actual physical school, or are you trying to take the school that we already have and ask them to kind of flip their model, or a combination?
Well, there's a combination. Our schools are all physical, full time, in person schools. So if you walk into any of our school buildings, you're going to see kids get dropped off in the morning. They jump into their 2 hour learning block, which during that time, they're getting this one-to-one mastery based kind of educational experience. And then after lunch, the kids are doing their workshops. Unfortunately, I really wish that I could give you a different answer and say that the public traditional school system is just welcoming us with open arms and has said, we would love to adopt 2 hour learning and we will implement it in schools across the country. But the public education system is a beast. And I experienced that all those years ago when I was a parent within, trying to just see if there was anything that we could do to adjust the model a little bit. And so the strategy that I'm really working towards is building my own distribution system. And so I'm opening private schools around the country, and we're also working on charter access. If we could get charter access, then that would give us public funds, which would make these tuition free schools. And I really believe that this model of education can help millions of children, not just hundreds or thousands. It can help millions of children. So I spend a lot of my time working on how to make this more accessible to as many students as possible.
Well, absolutely. And it's really mind blowing because of AI. This could help people in all over the world. Like,
And it actually already is. We have over 1,000 Ukrainian refugee students who are using 2 hour learning in Eastern Europe, because those are a lot of students that literally hadn't had access to school because of being displaced by the war and just not having room in the refugee cities that they were in. And so one of the things when I said accessible, I didn't say scalable. And part of the reason I didn't say scalable is because our model is incredibly scalable. That's actually not really our biggest challenge, right? Scalability with AI, literally every student can have their own personal tutor, right? And a lot of the things that you'll hear about in traditional education, when we think about how to get it better, you'll hear the same kind of chants, which is we need more teacher training. We need to lower the student teacher ratio. We need more teachers, all of those things. And here's the thing. First of all, it's very hard to do that because not only do we not have more teachers, we're losing teachers. Teachers are leaving the field in droves because teachers are overworked, underappreciated, and underpaid. It's a really tough job. They have been given an impossible task. And I will tell you, people who choose to work in a classroom are heroes. They are absolutely amazing people, but they're set up to fail because of the model of education. But even if we did have more teachers, we're never going to be able to approach what's needed to really give every single student that level of education that they need. And AI is really good at doing that. And so, what we've done with our philosophy is we're using artificial intelligence to do what it's great at, which is provide that perfect level and pace of education to every student. And then we're using the humans in our classroom to do what they're really good at, which is connect, motivate, and support while holding students to really high standards and helping them realize that they can do anything they set their mind to.
Oh, wow. That's so needed because I know there are two teachers in my family and they come home broken because they are actually just managing people's emotions all day long. And their classroom is only rising to the level of the most disturbed and challenged child.
Exactly.
And it breaks their hearts because so many people are not rising to their potential. And don't we all need a mentor, somebody to motivate us, someone to believe in us? Because I think today's teachers don't have time to do that. They're just trying to get through the curriculum because they have to do the testing to prove that they learned something that they're going to forget. There's no experiential learning. So, how
Teachers don't have time to do all of those things. And one of the things that I always think is so important, the what is critical to our model success is the human in the classroom. We are not trying to replace teachers. We are transforming the role of teachers. So instead of having to create lesson plans and lecture in classes and grade homework and papers, we're letting the adults in the classroom do what they got into this field to do, which is positively impact students by being their motivational and emotional support. They really are we call them guides, and they're the guides on the side versus the sage on the stage, right? And so what I found is that we have a lot of traditional teachers who have come into our schools and are now working as guides. And they absolutely love that ability to spend their time and effort focusing on the child and not all of the curriculum requirements that are needed or figuring out how you're going to teach 30 kids that are at wildly different levels on this. And so I really have loved just personally getting to see that role transformation to something that I think is going to attract more people to get into education, which really is the most critical thing that our society needs. It's, in my opinion, I think education is where everything else launches from.
so break it down. If I were to come into school and I needed to do my 2 hours of learning, is that a tutor that's an AI tutor and then there's a guide? And do you find it hard for kids to get motivated to sit down and do the work, or do they make it fun?
Well, I will tell you the experience that you would have on her if you came in and you were a student in one of our schools. You would show up, and the first thing we do is we always get together for what we call a limitless launch, where our students and our guides get together. Think Tony Robbins for kids. It's 15 minutes where we're teaching some sort of growth mindset. We're often doing some sort of exercise or activity, and we're helping kids get clear about what the goals that they want to focus on for that day are. After that 15-minute kind of limitless launch, then our students move into their 2 hour learning block. And so what you would see is you'll see students that are sitting on their computers individually, and they are working with an AI tutor and they're working on adaptive apps that are happening. So they're doing all of their core academics, math, science, reading, language. At the high school level, they're doing all of their AP classes, everything on their computers. So you might walk around one of our schools and you'll see kids sitting at tables, but they're working on computers. You'll see guides that are nearby and they're not teaching, But if you had a kid who, especially at younger levels, if you have a kid who's a little bit like not focused, you'll say to God, like, hey, let's work on this. The guide's job during that 2 hour learning period is to help develop these self-driven learners so that if they are having an issue with something that they're learning, the guide might say, well, have you tried this resource on your computer? Have you watched the video? Have you read the explanation? Have you gone into the resource library to learn about this? You're never going to see one of our guides teaching a kid how to carry the one and, do this. They are not teachers. They're really supporting these kids on developing the life skill of learning how to learn. And then in the afternoon, our students are doing workshops, and those workshops are facilitated by the guides. So the majority of the day, you're going to see kids interacting with each other and with guides doing really connected kind of social things. And an example of what that might look like at our sports academy, we have a school that's kindergarten through eighth grade where kids do their 2 hour learning in the morning. And then the afternoon, the idea is that they are out running around and being physical. So that's everything from playing soccer to dodgeball to doing agility training, just things that get physical. They're also doing things like brain training where they're doing reaction time types of things. It's this philosophy that a sport heavy childhood is awesome and you can learn a lot of life skills through that. But then we also do workshops, for example, where students have to negotiate their Major League Baseball contract. And then they develop a budget for how they're going to manage the money that they're making from this contract. They write the press release that it announces, their joining of a team. Then they're also designing the Nike ad campaign that they have signed on to. And so we take things
Cool.
with themes of what kids are really interested in. In this example, sports or something like that. We have another school called Next Gen Academy, where our students who love esports and gaming, and we're teaching teamwork skills because they get to do bomb diffusing simulations where they're working as a team to defuse a bomb, and they're also getting to do some gaming. There's so many different ways that you can meet a child in the interest they have to develop those life skills. And then, especially when you got to the point about motivation, in my opinion, is about 90% of what creates a great learner. 10% is delivering the pace and the level of education that a student needs. But if you don't have a motivated student, you're lost, right? You're totally lost. And so what we have found is that the best motivator we can give to a child is the gift of time to get back and do these other things. So instead of sitting in class all day, going to math class for 50 minutes and then going to English class for 50 minutes, and so on and so on. We give them their afternoons to do what they like. The other thing we've done within our schools is we've created a lot of motivation models because we believe that if we can extrinsically motivate students, they start to become competent at their academics. Competence leads to confidence. That confidence often leads to intrinsic motivation. If you're not good at math, you don't like doing math. But when you start to realize, you know what, I understand math and I can see that I can progress. Kids start saying, you know what, I'm actually good at math and I like math and I want to continue to improve. So that's a big part of what we've been able to create with our philosophy is how to develop motivated students.
It appears that really the gift that you're teaching is resourcefulness because so many people go, well, I don't understand. I don't know how to do it. You're teaching them, like you said, how to learn. And then at the same time, you are motivating them and helping them to be more time efficient with the
Yeah.
things that they want to get done. And I don't know, but what you're teaching these kids, I would say a lot of college athletes and NFL athletes probably need to learn too about budgeting, especially with all this NIL and new things that are happening in professional sports. And they go in not really having the knowledge of really how to use those resources and not waste them. It's
Well, I mean, that's
incredible.
true across the board. I mean, think about the lack of financial literacy skills that is taught in our schools, right? Kids go to college having no idea how credit cards work, how banking should work. They graduate college if they do, and they don't know about how to buy a house or how to decide if you should rent or buy or do your personal budgeting. Those are examples of some of the life skills that are just so critical to learn. And what we find is things like financial literacy, that's a very popular one. But you think about all of the other types of life skills that also aren't focused on in traditional school that we're able to do. For example, we have a how to be a spy workshop that we do with our fourth and fifth graders. And it's a really fun workshop, but the life skills we're teaching are communication and socialization skills. So, for example, we're teaching kids how to read body language, how to make eye contact, how to engage in a conversation with someone that you don't know and learn something about them. And so, those are skills that are so critical to go out and be successful in the world. And we do those in fun ways. And most importantly, we have time to focus that on that in school.
It sounds incredible. And I think everybody should be doing it this way. What about those parents that are like, I'm just trying to get the phone away from my child? Do I really want them doing it all day long? But it could be that if they learn to use it as a learning tool and they use it all day long to add service and be creative, then maybe they won't want to be on it later. I don't know. What have you seen?
So a very common concern when people are first learning about our model is they say, "Oh my gosh, I struggle enough with my kids' screen time. I don't want them going to school and doing more screen time." And there's a couple things I like to help illuminate with regard to that. First of all, not all screen time is equal. So doom scrolling TikTok or playing video games all day is not the same as getting a one-to-one personalized education in math that is meeting a student exactly where they are. So, if you think about the experience that our kids are having during their 2-hour learning block when they're on their computers, they're not on TikTok. They're literally learning exactly what they need. They're getting reading comprehension training where they're able to learn reading at their appropriate level and customize it to their interest. So if you're a third grade kid reading at a seventh grade level and you love baseball, guess what? You get to read about baseball stuff at that appropriate level. So it's a way more engaging way. I also would contrast that with what kids in traditional school are doing, which is sitting in a class, generally like a zombie, just watching. So you're right. The teacher's not on a screen, but how much interaction is really happening there, right? And when you think about the fact that they're doing that all day compared to the rich afternoons that we have of real social and connection and interaction. But the other thing that we do is we help teach kids how they should think about all of these tools that they have, on the internet. So an example of this in our middle school, one of the first exercises we have kids do is an ikigai workshop. It's a Japanese workshop that helps determine core values, desires of what you're interested in. What do you want to be? What do you want to do? What are the things that you're excited about? And then what we do is we have kids think about, are you spending your time making those things happen or what are you doing? And as part of that, we have them do an exercise of how they spend their time. And so there's 168 hours in a week. How much time are they spending on their phones or on their iPads during that time? And when they look at how much time they're spending, what are things they could be doing with that time instead of scrolling TikTok or watching YouTube or whatever? And what we find is that kids really want to be contributors and creators. They don't really want to be consumers. They just often aren't given that support or guidance to know how they can do something like that. And so here's the thing about screen time, social media, gaming, all that stuff. It's part of our world, right? We can't put the genie back in the box. But what we can do is we can help kids to learn that, you know what? Instead of just playing video games, maybe I could go build my own video game. Maybe I learned to code in order to build an app or do that. Instead of scrolling TikTok, why don't I become a creator who is putting good content out in the world and inspiring other people? And so there's a lot of learning how to be responsible with that thing. And one of the things we say too, it's true with AI tools as well. We help our students learn to use these tools to give them superpowers, not to cheat and not to just zone out, but what can they do to really help take them to the next level and use them as tools?
So, can adults do this? So it's K through 12, right?
It's currently K through 12, although I will say that we are looking at a lot of different opportunities. For example, there's a group in Uganda that are women who have been sex trafficked and they are working through kind of trauma training and what they're going to build with their lives. These women are illiterate. They've never had often any schooling, and we're looking at bringing 2-hour learning to them so that they can do basic math and reading. So the thing is, it can be done anywhere. We're also starting a pilot with a juvenile detention facility with teenagers who need to get their GEDs. And it's really hard to teach a 16-year-old, 17-year-old to get their GED if they're not reading, right? If they don't have basic math skills. And one of the things that's so great about an AI tutor is it meets the student exactly where they need to be. So I will say, Honor, I have not used 2-hour learning myself to go back and revisit math. I was a terrible math student growing up. I hated math. I didn't like school at all. I was very good at school for the most part. I got generally straight A's, but I never understood math and I was not great at it. And I think I only had to take one math class in all of college because I was like, I'm going to go the liberal arts way. So taking out a math, but I have not gone back and said, let me go relearn math. It's probably something that I should do, but I've been busy.
I did the same thing in college. I took French. I took more foreign language, but I don't remember any of it because they didn't make it interesting for me.
Yeah.
So,
Well, you think about most school is getting knowledge in your brain so that you can pass the test. And then for me, it would exit right out. And again, I was a successful student. I went to Stanford. Think about all of the kids who go through the school system and are so checked out, don't understand what they're doing. And what we really find is that in order to be a great critical thinker, it's so imperative that you have knowledge in your brain. So we are big fans of having a rigorous academic education, but it doesn't have to take all day and it doesn't have to require homework. It can be done so much more efficiently and allow kids to really, what we like to say is unlock their potential. And I think your podcast, Honor, has a similar philosophy. You're helping women to step into whatever it is that they want to go do. And we want young people to understand that they can step into that intersection of their passions and their talents, and that it's never too early to start exploring that. And as you mentioned, let's create people who are proactive and curious and know how to go out and find information and make things happen.
well, and it's not just my age. It's you're never too old, but you're also never too young. And speaking of that, if you could give any advice to some of the older women that actually their kids are gone, they're not really sure what the next phase of their life is, they're doubting their self worth. Where I tell women, if you've raised kids, you've been everything. You've been a manager, you've been a chauffeur, you've been a cook, you've been a chef, you've done everything. So you don't have an excuse, but what advice would you give if somebody just feels like they're made for more and they just don't know what to do next? What would you say?
Well, I will tell you, I've always been a very confident person, but when I got pregnant with my first daughter, I got hit with this wave of what I call worthlessness. I felt like there was something I was supposed to be doing that I wasn't doing. And I remember I would sit on the phone with my best friend and I'd say, yeah, I'm supposed to be doing something. And she'd be like, well, Mackenzie, you have a full-time job, you're growing a baby, like you're doing it. And I just remember being like, there's something more. I'm supposed to be having a bigger impact. And that continued with me throughout. Now, meanwhile, I was raising my family. I was working. I was being a wife. I explained the experience I had with my daughters. I ended up starting the school kind of as a side gig. It was just a volunteer thing because I needed a school for that. Over time, I eventually left my other career because I got busy with the school thing and also focusing on raising my kids. And what I realize now is my oldest daughter just graduated high school from Alpha School this past spring. And I realized that God put that seed in me when I was pregnant with her that said, this kid is going to have something to do with whatever bigger thing you're going to do.
Mhm.
And it started with these schools. And now I'm 48 years old and my career is, just taking off. And I think my next 20 years are going to be so exciting and fun. And I think that's something that I would love to just help help anyone who's listening to that know, like, there's so much that you can take from the experience that you have developed over the last however many years it's been to figure out what is that thing that you care about? What do you like? And I will say, I love getting up every day and doing my job. It doesn't feel like a job. It feels like a calling. And I spent so many years worrying and wondering, what's my calling? What am I supposed to do? And meanwhile, I was taking steps forward each and every day. I just didn't quite realize it. And so I think one of the things that I would say to people who are struggling with that is don't worry. Like it's all going to work out, but move forward. Just keep taking that next step. If you're interested in maybe learning about volunteering somewhere, go try it, right? If you're debating reaching out to someone that you met for coffee to learn about what they do, go try it. Take that step and do something. Because I think women, one of the big advantages that we have is once we have raised our kids, we've checked like a huge box of I've done that and I have the rest of my life to go maybe focus on a career or some sort of philanthropy or whatever it is that we want to do. And I'm really excited about that. I took my 20s and 30s to really be present and home with my kids. And now it's time to launch and go do cool stuff and have fun with my husband too.
That's so exciting. Every client I have, I'm going to make sure they hear your inspirational words. One last question I want to ask you before we close out is success stories. Do you have any success stories of just really explaining to parents or to the audience, these are some of the things that are actually happening for our kids, our students?
Yep. I'll start with one that just came to me yesterday. We have a student whose name is Grace. She's moved to our school halfway through fifth grade. So she's been with us for quite a while. She became interested in cancer because her grandfather passed away from cancer. And she thought, well, gosh, am I going to get cancer? Mom or dad, like, are you going to get cancer and die? And she started looking into this. Now, I think if she had been at a traditional school, she might have told someone, I'm interested in cancer. And someone would have said to her, well, then you should become a doctor. And then you can eventually study cancer. And maybe that student wouldn't have gotten an A in her biology class. And then she would have said, you know what? I don't know if I guess I'm not meant to be a doctor because I didn't do well in this one class. Well, instead, what she did at our school is we encouraged her to go and start learning, proactively learning about cancer. And she started researching and she started connecting with experts in the field. And she built an audience on X where she would basically take things that she had learned and she would summarize them into more layman speak. Like, here's something I learned. As part of that, she realized that there might be a connection to epigenetics and cancer, the food you eat, the environment you have, what you're putting in your body, not just, oh, it's a genetic thing and you're either unlucky or you're lucky, if you get or don't get cancer. She ended up developing and completely creating a documentary called Cancer, a Foodborne Illness. I think it's got over 6 million views currently. And she's now a freshman in college and she is heading to the Senate on Monday to testify about chronic disease. So she's managing all of that. That's an example
I
of
have
someone who
chills.
I'm
That gave me
yeah,
chills.
she was a high school student, who said, "Hey, it's not too early to really make a difference." And she's had so many different national platforms that she's been able to do this, all as an 18-year-old, right? She's doing these big things. She's going to be with Robert F. Kennedy testifying on Monday, and a bunch of other people. So that's one example. But let me give you some other examples. We have a student who came to us last fall, uh, fourth grade testing at about a first grade level. So 2.5, 3 years behind, right? Within 4 months, he had gone up 2 grade levels. And by the end of the school year, he was at above grade level. He finished his fourth grade year. He was working in fifth grade math and sixth grade science, and he was in end of fourth grade language. So he had caught up. And those are the stories that I think are amazing because you think about that kid in a traditional environment as a fourth grader thinking, I'm dumb. I'm not good at school. I'm just not one of those students. Thinking of their parents saying, you know what? I guess this is just my kid kind of a C student. That's what they are. That amount of time that he would spend in the traditional system, where by the way, it would only get worse because if you don't understand fractions, it's really hard to do algebra. If you don't understand algebra, try doing pre-calc. It's impossible, right? And he was going to be on that. And so one of the things that I love about our school model is we can take a student wherever they are. If they're behind, we can take them. If they're advanced, we can take them. We meet that student where they are and they can just really go at the trajectory that works for them. And so our students are learning twice as fast, but we have some of our students learning 6, 7, 8 times faster. And guess what? Those students are students that are learning faster, whether they came in behind at grade level or advanced. And that's, I think, something that's really magical about that. But then I'll give you another example of this as well. We have some students that are on the spectrum. And we had one student who came up to me last spring when we were doing that How to Be a Spy workshop. And he walked up to me and he said, "Hi, Miss MacKenzie, how are you?" And he shook my hand. And then he said, "How is your day going today?" And I said, "My day is going great. How is yours?" And he spoke with me and he brought up the weather. And then he looked at me and he said, "Have you noticed I've been maintaining eye contact with you?" And I said, "I have noticed." And what was really great about that, about 2 days later, his mom came to me and she had tears in her eyes and she said, "This is the type of skills that my child needs to be focusing on." But guess what? It's not just the kid who's on the autism spectrum that needs to focus on eye contact and making conversation and shaking hands. Everyone could use that kind of lesson. And so I just love the fact that we're able to give kids that time and space and guidance to develop those critical life skills, which is what really matters. So I think there's so many great success stories and it's really fun to see the difference that we're making in these
Right.
kids' lives. And then on top of that, our top commitment is that kids will love school. And when we're able to say, "Hey, kids are so excited about going to school." In fact, I had a parent call me 2 days ago that said, we were leaving for an extra day to go to a family wedding. And my daughter didn't want to miss school. She's like, "I don't want to go. I want to be at school." And that's an incredible testament because you know what? For kids, school is their career for 13 years. Let's make it
Right.
something really enjoyable that they love, not something that they just tolerate.
Oh, I love that. I could talk to you all day long, but I'm good. But I do love to end each podcast with the same question for every guest.
Ooh, I can't wait to
Yeah.
hear.
So this podcast is called the Honor It Podcast. So what or who are you choosing to honor today?
Ooh, who am I choosing to honor today? Wow. Um, You know what? I'm in a weird spot, and you can probably appreciate this. I'm a month into my oldest daughter being gone at college.
Mhm.
And so, what I've noticed for the last 2 months is that I can cry at the drop of a hat because I read a great thing the other day that said, "You're not an empty nester, you're a bird launcher."
I saw
And
that. That was
you see that?
great.
It was so great, and I thought about it because I am so excited for my daughter, who I think is so well prepared to go out in the world and just crush everything she's doing, and it's been so fun to hear about her experience over the past month that she's been at school, socially, academically, learning to do, like, she's like, "Do I really have to change my sheets at once a week?" I mean, I know some kids who haven't changed their sheets yet at all, and I was like and I'd actually told her I thought she should change them twice a week, but she's like, "Mom, I'm just doing it once a week. I think that's plenty enough." So it's been really fun, and I was speaking to her last night, and she called me, and I was so excited. Now when she calls, I'm like, "Hello, I gotta take this call," and I said, "Yeah, I hadn't heard from you," and she said, "Mom, the less you hear from me, the better it is because I'm doing great." And so I'm excited. And so given the fact that we've had this conversation about school and what I've been doing over the last several years, and the fact that I'm in just such a happy place of watching my oldest kid, fly out of the nest, I'd like to honor her. Her name is Peyton, and she's awesome.
Oh, that's so awesome. And what is she wanting to study or do? Do you mind me asking?
She is interested in kind of a history, law, politics track. She goes to
Okay.
Vanderbilt University, and they have some sort of a interdisciplinary major there. I think if she were talking to you, you'd think, "Oh, do you want to go to law school?" But she doesn't really. She's like, "I don't think I want to go to law school," because she hasn't met very many lawyers who actually like being lawyers. No offense to lawyers that are listening to this, but it's something on that. She loves to write and she is very interested in moral values that are seen through pop culture. So one of the things she spent a lot of time with it at her high school experience, her masterpiece project that she worked on was teaching Gen Z moral and religious values via pop culture. And she would do that in ways like, let's examine Taylor Swift and how she thinks of forgiveness as an example. And it was a great
Interesting.
way for her to engage with young people around their thoughts about forgiveness, which it's interesting. Forgiveness is it's a big can of worms, right? In so many ways,
Yes, it
I'm sure
is.
you focused on this. And so she's enjoyed those types of things. I think she is very much a philosopher at heart.
Oh, that is so wonderful. And I will tell you, at the end of college, we threw all those sheets out. So, I think they waited longer than a week or two to change them. But
Yeah,
anyway,
that's what I'm hearing.
this has been such a blessing to speak to you today. And I really appreciate you taking the time. And what a perfect way to complete this episode with MacKenzie Price. Thank you, MacKenzie. And until next time, remember, we are not promised tomorrow. So be present today. It's a gift and take time to honor it all.